I have discussed a few times in these videos that one of the tenets of the structure of this project, one that can be both a positive and a negative, is that I have to actually play every game, even in genres that I wouldn't normally frequent. This has resulted in me being exposed to traditional RPGs like Evolution and puzzle games like Sega Swirl and Choo Choo Rocket. Games that became personal obsessions that I would not have given a shot to had I not been forced to for the project. But also, it brought me to games that just weren't for me. Most of which seem to be games where I operate large crafts shooting at other large crafts. I fidgeted restlessly flying aircraft in Air Force Delta and Incoming. I tapped my foot during space battles in Armada. I sighed while shooting cars in Vigilante 8 Second Offense, tanks in Wild Metal, and bugs in Centipede. The one craft shooter I did get into was Slave Zero, which was technically a mech combat game, but structurally was an arcadey shooter. And the humanoid robot moved like a living creature, so it didn't feel like the sort of operational battle sim that leaves me cold. Gundam Side Story 0079 Rise from the Ashes, meanwhile, is a much different story. Mobile Suit Gundam is in many ways as foundational to anime as anime gets. It was developed in the late 1970s as a pivot from super robot anime like Tetsujin 28 Go and Mazinger Z. Stories about young boys piloting giant metal men to protect the Earth from enemies. Gundam's innovation was realism. In what came to be known as the real robot subgenre, the crafts operated by much more stringently realistic physics, and much of the drama comes from mechanical failure and technological limitations of the mechs themselves. Gundam, originally released in 1979, ably navigated a balance between gritty technological realism and emotional space opera plotting. The original story is set in what is known as the Universal Century, the year 0079. A separatist faction called the Principality of Zeon has declared independence from the Earth Federation, going to war with their new innovation, mobile suit mechs. The protagonist of the show is a young man named Amuro Ray, who stumbles upon Earth's prototype mech and finds that he has a natural aptitude with it, and a ragtag group of civilians and refugees jumps into the fight for survival. Gundam's Side Story 0079 Rise from the Ashes is set during the same time period, but curiously eschews any relationship to the main plot. I guess that's why it's a side story, huh? Rise from the Ashes is set in Australia, and the protagonists are not a ragtag group of survivors. They're an elite team of hardened soldiers known as the White Dingo Squad, who receive various missions to combat attacks from the Principality of Zeon. Even as anime is bigger than ever in North America, passionate Gundam fandom seems to be a rather niche subsection, a thing that appeals to a very specific subset of people. Its adherence to hard science means a slavish devotion to technical aspects. It appeals to builders, to tinkerers, a passion for pieces and items and upgrades. There are dozens upon dozens of Gundam games, most of which were Japan exclusive, and take place across many genres, including tactical role-playing games and 1v1 fighting games. But in 1997, developer From Software put out a highly acclaimed mech battle game called Armored Core, where the focus was on robot battles, as well as meticulous and detailed upgrades and replacement of individual parts. Rise from the Ashes is very similar, and an obsession with branding and categorizing and jargon, topics tangentially related to things that preoccupy me as well, list-making, terminology, proper nouns and shit. But I am not technologically minded. I have no interests towards the inner workings of machines. That just isn't what sparks my brain. And so a major part of this game's appeal just sails right over my head. The actual gameplay is also something that bored me. Like I said, for whatever reason, it just feels flat and tedious to me as a concept. And even as Rise from the Ashes has humanoid-shaped mechs like Slave Zero, the latter's crafts were essentially just men who ran with brisk, lithe movements. Rise from the Ashes has mechs that I found stiff and awkward to navigate, and combat I found repetitive. I wanted to put lots of caveats here, though, that I wasn't trying to call this a bad game, because it's just a game that isn't meant for me. I also just flat out wasn't very good at it. I struggled to navigate the craft, I struggled to aim or cycle through my weapons, I struggled to hit anyone enough to take them down, I struggled to complete missions within the time frame. But I am fully happy to put the blame on myself in this situation, and not as much the game. And my complete disinterest in playing it did not provide a motivating factor to get any better at it. Slave Zero had a really cool urban dystopian setting, and a really quirky control structure that intrigued me and made me want to play more. But Rise from the Ashes is mostly set on arid, mountainous terrain to set up these sorts of wide anime battlegrounds, and it just didn't click for me. Back on the Sword of the Berserk episode, I talked about how I changed my processes for this series, so that if a product was based on an extra textual property, I familiarized myself with that, too. That rule led me to getting immersed in 200 chapters of the excellent manga Berserk. I tried to do the same thing with Gundam shows, giving myself 6 full months to try and involve myself in an arena of anime that I had never experienced. I made it through a handful of episodes of the original series, but didn't pursue it further. And then the game wasn't related at all outside of chronology setting, so I guess Gundam will have to wait another day. Rise from the Ashes was barely released in the US, and it's hard to find a ton of information or critical reviews. But, as always with vehicle shooters, if this looks cool, maybe it's for you. Because it certainly wasn't for me. Next time, you wouldn't steal a car.